through the grind of an 82-game regular season and 4 rounds of playoff hockey, there can only be one champion. As the New York Islanders continue their drive for 5, we encourage you to listen in as we discuss everything going on with your favorite team. From allislanders.com, this is the All Islanders Podcast with Chris, David, Jared, and Scott.
Back to Polsak, scores! Flips it on for Anders Lee, scores! As Gionta to Ladd, he scores! Leddy able to find it, Tavares back over, scores! Tavares, Ladd, scores!
Hey guys, it's David from the All Islanders Podcast. Today is a huge day for the podcast. Feels like we just started this about a month ago, and we've already had Andy Graziano on. And right now we have another amazing guest. We have an Islanders legend, Arthur Staple, on to answer some of our questions. So how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're good, thanks. So if it's okay, we're just going to start off asking you our first question. Again, thanks for coming on. So our first question today is kind of about the trade deadline and how it went. I'm sure you've heard a lot about this, and I'm sure you've seen on Twitter a lot of disappointed Islander fans. But one thing that I found interesting was that it was actually reported that Garth Snow received the green light from the Islanders owners to do whatever he wanted, which was obviously go after Duchesne. And Doug Waite was also the interim coach and assistant GM. So all this, keeping all this in mind, Garth Snow, I've heard some things from some people that his job may not be safe after the summer, depending on how the Islanders do. But for some reason, I feel like, judging on how the deadline went, I feel like he's safe. So if you want to comment on that, we'd really appreciate it. Do you think Garth Snow's job is safe no matter what this offseason?
Well, I think it remains to be seen. I'm sure he'll have some job with the organization. He's been president and general manager now for 11 years, and Charles Long, as the majority owner, ran things a certain way and gave Garth Snow a lot of autonomy to do what he needed to do. And now that there's 2 new owners in charge this year, Scott Malkin and John Ledecky, and I think it's been pretty widely discussed about how John Ledecky's been searching for someone to possibly take over hockey operations, maybe be a person to oversee Garth Snow. But I think Garth Snow will still be around, and I think you're right to see that the way that he handled the trade deadline, and I don't think the owners have really meddled too much in his hockey decisions. He was out trying to make a trade, and whether it was Matt Duchesne or Tyler Johnson or someone to bring in to be a number 2 center and kind of prop up the middle of the forward group, I think it was those were Garth Snow's decisions, and whether obviously nothing came to fruition, but I don't think it was for a lack of trying or anybody holding him back from above. So I think we'll see what happens in the off season. There's certainly still a possibility that the owners could bring someone in, but I think for now, Garth Snow is still the president and GM, and that's the way it's going to be until further notice. Yeah,
so that's pretty interesting. We've been wondering that for a while. And another question we have is, if Garth Snow is the GM this offseason, which it sounds like is very possible, do you feel like he'll be very aggressive in the trade market and possibly go after Duchesne like he did again? Or do you feel like he could try to work with the free agent market and try to get a big name there? Or do you feel like he could just stick with his prospects that he has right now?
I think they're going to be aggressive. I think with the expansion draft coming up in the middle of June and then the NHL draft, I think there's going to be a lot more movement around that time than there was at the trade deadline. It certainly seemed like a lot of general managers, not just the Islanders, held on to their picks and held on to their players, and if they were sellers, and hopeful in hope that they would be able to move them with maybe a few more teams insert in the summertime. And I think if you're a buyer, you're not really sure what things are going to look like when you get to the expansion draft, what the list will look like, who Las Vegas would be interested in taking. So I think there's going to be some movement around then, and if it's an opportunity to remake the Islanders roster a little bit and go back at probably going to, if they don't do anything, they're going to lose a good player that they like in the expansion drafts, probably a defenseman. So if they can shuffle some things around and protect the guys they need to protect and maybe upgrade their top six forwards on offense, then I would think they're still going to try to do that in the summer.
Yeah, so you just said about the defensemen, and one thing that we've written a lot of articles about on the site, and we've been debating for a while, is the possibility of Ryan Pulock's becoming an expendable piece for the Islanders. Do you feel like even though he's one of their best prospects, he is a big right defenseman, which is really valued? Do you feel like the Islanders will have to possibly trade him, just looking at how the expansion draft could play out with them losing him? Or do you feel like the Islanders will maneuver their way around everything and find a way to keep him on this team for the future?
I have to feel that he's going to be a piece of some trade talks. He's obviously one of their, of the guys that haven't really spent a ton of time in the NHL. He's their top defense prospect. He may not necessarily be the guy that Joe Sakic insisted on that Garthner wouldn't include. I don't think it goes that far, but I think he's a chip for them right now. He's either a guy that could maybe bring back a big name forward, or he's a guy who, if they lose a defenseman or trade another defenseman or two, can slot right in and be that guy that I know a lot of Islander fans are hoping to see him be a guy who can bomb away from the point on the power play and be the effective defenseman that he was for a time in the playoffs before he got hurt last year. And he's certainly done all he can do in the AHL, and I think right now it's just more of a numbers game that's not up in the NHL. They've obviously got Adam Pelech and Scott Mayfield who spent time in Bridgeport this year, who have been up and kind of been in and out of the lineup and really handled that well. And I think, like a lot of the prospects the Islanders have had over the years, they would rather have a guy like Pulock playing regularly than in and out of the lineup at the NHL level. So I think that kind of explains why he's still down there. And if he's still an Islander when the expansion draft comes around, they're certainly going to protect him. He's a valuable asset, even if he hasn't played many games in the NHL level. And if, like I said, if they can't include him in a deal to entice a big name forward back, they'll go forward and hope that big shot helps their power play, which certainly could use a lot of help as it's still kind of down in the bottom third of the league this year.
Yeah, so Scott, I know you've really been in favor of trading Pulock. And I just know if you haven't talked yet, I don't know if you want to comment on that and give your opinions, then possibly ask a question after.
Sort of in favor of dealing him. I mean, if he's a valuable piece, then why don't you expend him? I mean, you got guys like Letty and Boychuk who are locked up a long time. Hamonic, it seems like his value has dropped due to the whole trade request, resigned and thing, and then his poor statistics this year. I don't really see him fitting in the Isles blue line, but somebody I do see fitting in this year, but possibly not in the future, is Dennis Seidenberg, even though he's been great this year. Do you possibly see him coming back next year as a depth piece?
It's interesting. Being around the coaches and around the players, there's nothing but positives that are said about Dennis Seidenberg. He's kind of one of those ultimate professionals. I know the Islanders have specialized in bringing in veteran guys like him over the years, but he's really, having been bought out by the Bruins, I think a lot of the people at the Islanders were surprised when he got here that just how professional and prepared he is, and physically and mentally. He's not the fastest skater. He's not the biggest guy, but his positioning is really good. And really, what he's contributed, I think, he's got 19 points. A lot of them came early in the year when it seemed like every shot he took either went in or went in off somebody. So I think he's really rounded out their group nicely. I'm not sure that I would assume that their hope is that they get to the point where they have 7 guys who are homegrown or guys that are under contract once training camp starts, that they don't need a Marek Zidlichky or going back further a Steve Stajos or someone more of a stopgap guy like Dennis Seidenberg has been. So I think they love what he's brought this year. But going forward, I think those kind of decisions are always sort of last minute. You have to see where your young guys are at. And really with the expansion draft, we don't even know what the B core is going to look like when we get close to next season. So I'm sure he'd be an interesting option to kind of come in and be that 6th, 7th guy again next year if he's willing and still wants to keep playing. But definitely not sure. But certainly what he's given him this year has been a lot more than a lot of people thought.
Okay, so I know Seidenberg was on a great tear early this year, looking at career highs in points and goals, and then he just got unlucky, got the shot off of his face down in Florida. But now that injury's gone and he's wearing a face mask, and he's been wearing a face mask, players who are injured right now for the Islanders, Alan Quine, Johnny Boychuk, and Shane Prince, you got any updates about them?
Well, Boychuk is still out. I think he took a shot off a bad part of his foot in Chicago, so he's been hobbling around on the rest of this trip. I would imagine that he won't play until we get back home next week. Shane Prince flew home. It looked like that was a bad ankle sprain the way he got hit in Edmonton. If it's a high ankle sprain, that's usually bad news. And with only a month or so left in the season, that would probably be it for him. But we'll have to see on him. And Alan Quine, he stayed behind in the second half of the road trip. I think they were calling it an upper body injury. I would imagine that he's probably still a week or two away from returning. But I think, just talking about the injured guys, Casey Cizikas is the one that they're most looking forward to having back. And, he suffered what we suspect was a broken hand in Detroit at the beginning of this trip. But, and they had said it was going to be 4 weeks. So, all indications that I get that it's going to be sooner than that. So if he can get back next week and really kind of put that fourth line back together the way it should be, you worry a little bit less about the return of guys like Quine and Prince, because then Anthony Beauvillier can move up a little bit. And certainly with the addition of Josh Hosang to that top line, it's a little bit more dynamic offense, I think, up there. And certainly with Casey Cizikas back, that fourth line is always a lot more effective.
Yeah, so we just talked about Hosang. Jared has a question about his influence on the team early on, so I'm going to go to him.
Hi, Arthur. I'm Jared. Nice to meet you.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. So, you were saying stuff like Hosang, it's now his time to, show who he is and stuff. So, what do you think his influence is going to be over the next few weeks with him playing in for these injuries and stuff? And how do you think it's going to go for the rest of the season if he plays in the playoffs?
I think the way that he started out, that to me is one of the differences between Doug Weight and Jack Capuano. I think Doug Weight, kind of impressed upon Garth Snow that, before the trade deadline, why go out and get, a 30-something-year-old veteran, a Waddy Verbata, have to give up a second-round pick, or Thomas Vanek. Not that was really an option to bring him back, but go out and get one of those rental forwards who's older, and has been around, and instead bring up Josh Hosang, who was lighting it up in Bridgeport, and brings a level of skill and dynamism to their lineup that really nobody that was a rental possibility could have brought. And I think Jack Capuano was always a little more cautious when it came to the prospects and the rookies, and I'm sure that frustrated a lot of people. I certainly heard about all their frustrations about how he used the young guys via Twitter and those sorts of things. But the time seemed right for Josh Hosang, and he scored a really nice goal the other night. And I just think he's even Doug Weight. Doug doesn't try to sound like he's surprised, but I think he is a bit surprised at how responsible Hosang has been. And by responsible, it doesn't mean he's taking away from his offensive skills, but he's really trying to work his ability and his magic with the puck in with being on a team that's fighting for a playoff spot, not overstaying shifts, not getting out of position. He didn't play very well in Calgary, but nobody did. And he came right back and had a fantastic game at Edmonton. He was driving a lot of the play. Got the big power play goal. With the power play hadn't been going very well for 10 or so games. So I think it just it's all worked out very well and ended up being a very shrewd move by Garth Snow not to go out and gamble on a veteran guy to bring in, but bring in one of their own. And Doug Weight has really given him a lot more free rein than Jack Capuano would have at such a crucial time, and he's really responded. And I think if he continues to respond, he's going to be in there playing.
Yeah, so now just to transition a little bit onto how the season's going. I gotta say, it's been, we've been spoiled the last 2 years. The Islanders have a tough recent history. They haven't been that great for a while, but the last 2 years, I mean, they were top of the league for a good percentage of the year. And then this year, started off, as we all know, they were the second worst team in the league for a while, right ahead of Colorado, Arizona. They were down there with them. And then after the firing of Jack Capuano, they just skyrocketed up the playoff standings. And I really think it's interesting looking at some statistics from them this year. I'm sure you've heard these statistics, but the Islanders are 3-7 in OT and 1-4 in shootouts, and they also haven't lost back-to-back regulation games in a really long time. And the regulation games they have lost have been blowouts since Doug Waite. So all this combined really makes everything crazy. And just commenting on that, how do you feel that Doug Waite can get control, and just really, how do you think he has gotten control after these tough losses, and how do you feel he will continue to get control of the team as the playoffs come around?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting that I guess of the 6 losses they've had within that, it really, a few of them, Calgary, Toronto, Columbus, come to mind quickly. Even Ottawa, which was a 3-0 loss, they were never really in Jersey, where they were down 3-0 in the third period and tried to come back. So that's almost all of these games that they've lost under Doug Waite on the road. Where I think the way that the first half of the season went and how hard the team is pressing each night, that level of desperation. I think when you stumble a bit or give up a couple of goals, I think it's just human nature to kind of collectively sit back and exhale and think, all right, well, it's obviously not working tonight, and then you get run over because some of these teams they're playing are very skilled teams and very determined. And really, a team like Columbus, a team like Calgary, those are 2 teams that are just firing on all cylinders right now. And it's hard to keep the waves from crashing over you repeatedly when you've been pushing so hard. But really, the key, as you said, is the way they've responded. They haven't lost consecutive regulation games since mid-December. I think it's 11 straight where they've come back and either won or gotten a point, and that's obviously huge. You fall into a losing streak, even if it's only 2 or 3. With all the teams that are chasing them, and that could really be it for them with so few games to go. So that resilience is important, and I think that's kind of been a hallmark of this team for a couple of years. That really what helped them turn the corner in 2014-15. They were giving up a lot of goals that year, but the timely goals that they would get, especially in third periods, if they gave back a lead, they would be able to kind of dig deep and come up with another goal. And really, I know you guys are young, but you can think back to whether it's 2013-14 or 2011-12 and some of the years before that, where this team would get a lead and look pretty good, and they would just get run over. And that's just experience and maturity and all the things that all the cliches that a lot of players and coaches like to throw out, but they do actually mean something. You have to be able to learn how to win games, close out games, and I think one of the things that they have over the Leafs in this chase of the last playoff spot is the Leafs have given back a lot of third period leads because it's a very young team that hasn't really learned how to put the hammer down when they need to. And I think in Edmonton, obviously, Connor McDavid is a once in a generation player, and the Oilers are a very good team that has a lot of offensive skill. But you saw the Islanders kill off that penalty with a 1-goal lead in the third period, and boom, Andrew Ladd scores, and suddenly they got a 2-goal lead in the air. It kind of came out of that building. And that's what successful teams can do. They stem the tide. They get they maintain their confidence level even if the other team is pouring it on when you have a lead, and you'll be able to hold on to that lead. And really, that to me is the biggest difference between the beginning of the year and this stretch right now is that the Islanders were in a lot of games. Those first 20, they were tied, they were leading, and came away with 1 point or no points. Although I've said it many times, 5 games out of those first 20 they were tied inside of 3 minutes to go in the third period, and they lost in regulation. And that's those 1-goal games. The stat guys always say they're a bit of a coin flip, and you can point to a lot of different things to blame for in each of those losses. But really, when they add up, you can't say it's coaching, you can't say it's ability. It's just one key breakdown at the wrong time, and all of a sudden you come away with no points. And you think even if they got to overtime or a shootout and lost those extra 5 points, what that would do for this team right now, and how much confidence level is very high, and they're playing like a team that's learned over the last couple of years how to win important games and close them out, and from the goaltender on out.
Yeah, so I just making a few comments on what you just said. Then I'm going to go to Jared for a question. I actually referenced that stat in one of my articles, and I actually wrote an article about how it could look. I really hope Capuano. This was before he was fired, and I didn't want to blame those on Capuano just because I didn't feel like it was his fault. But looking back on it, Waite's winning those games, so that's interesting. But hopefully at the end of the year, if we don't make it by a little bit, I really just hope that Islanders fans don't scapegoat those few games as the fault for their season. So so going to Scott now for a question about the arena. Jared just left.
Jared, the question about the arena.
Oh, okay, Jared. Sorry, yeah, I messed up there. Jared, arena question.
Oh yeah, well, with arena questions, there's been a lot of talk about the Islanders recently and like where they're going to play in the upcoming years because we've been kicked out of the Barclays Center. So, like many other New York team owners, such as James Dolan and Fred Wilpon, have come out to say they're willing to help the Islanders build an arena somewhere in the metro area, preferably in Belmont. Do you believe Malkin and Wadecki are looking at the situation as a primary source of an arena, or will they explore elsewhere, let's say like Hartford or something else?
No, I don't think they're looking anywhere outside of the New York area. I think, all you need to do is see the way that the NHL is handling teams like the Coyotes and the Hurricanes, which have much more, precarious situations where they are, out in Arizona, where they've had arena problems for years and attendance problems for years. In Carolina, where, attendance is not always so great, they're really making a push to keep those teams where they are. So I think certainly a team in New York and such, and the history that the Islanders have had is not going to go anywhere. But it seems like it's in the very early stages right now, and nobody's really said anything publicly about it other than a couple of articles about the Islanders owners' desire to have their own building. And I'm sitting here at the end of a very long road trip that's pretty much a direct result of some conflicts between the team and Barclays Center about scheduling and about dates. All these home games that they had early in the year, and obviously they could have played a lot better in those home games. But even if they were 30-0 at home, this 9-game road trip, which is a franchise long in the 45 years of the team, it's unprecedented, and it's really not the way that the Islanders want to structure their season. This is such a crucial time of the year, and finishing the season with 17 of their last 24 on the road, even if they were safely in the playoffs, it's not the way you want to structure things. So, I'm sure that the owners are looking around and trying to figure out a situation that would be better for them. It's obviously a difficult thing to do to try to get a new arena built in the New York area where there's already four buildings that have been around for a few years that host concerts and other sports and all different kinds of events. So putting a fifth one in there would be a tough sell, but it seems like Belmont Park is the most viable option. There's land there. It's controlled by New York State. It's not really controlled by Nassau County. And obviously the Islanders have had lots of troubles with Nassau County over the years. So, it's all very early on, and obviously they're going to be stuck playing in Brooklyn for at least a couple more years because they don't have any place else to go. So there's going to have to be some better relations on both of those sides going forward. And the Islanders certainly hope that they get better choice of dates, maybe a few more Saturday games, a few more afternoon games, just a way to bring more fans into the building and make it a little bit more accessible for a lot of their longtime fans who have to travel a little bit further now. So it's not ideal for sure, but it's hard to just say, to throw your hands up and say, well, one side can just walk away and that'll be that. They really don't have any place else to go yet. They're working on solving that issue, but for now, the Islanders are calling Barclays Center home, and everybody's going to have to swallow a little hard and accept that that's the reality for now.
Yeah, so it's really interesting that you said that. Actually, I was looking to go to a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon game, and I was looking earlier in the year, and the only home afternoon game was the Columbus game on the 18th. So I'm actually going to that. I would have been going to more games if they had more games at that time slot, but unfortunately that's the only one of the year. So, that stinks, but that's what Barclays is. I mean, the circus and some college basketball is taking the place of the Islanders' home right now, and that's kind of unfortunate, but it really just shows that the Islanders and the Barclays Center have not had the best relationships as of the last few years. So I just want to ask you one question. I'm not sure if it has been confirmed that the Islanders are in fact leaving Barclays in 2 years. It is a fact that they will be leaving Barclays in 2 years as of this point, right?
I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
Even if there was an agreement for a new arena that they could announce tomorrow and put a shovel in the ground, 2 years is way too short to build a state-of-the-art arena. So I think just the 2 years is really that's how long the contract lasts before both sides can kind of open it up and renegotiate, and that's really all that's assured right now. But I would think it's going to be a little bit more than that. The reality is that you can't build a building that fast.
Yeah, so they could both come to a mutual agreement where they decide that the Islanders could stay for X amount of more years just while the Islanders get their situation worked out. So I'm assuming that could be a possibility, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would think so.
Okay, so that's interesting. And just on to the, I don't know, we just got Chris in. Chris actually had class. He's a college student. I don't know if he wants to introduce himself and ask a possible question on the arena topic, but Chris is here, right?
Yeah, what's up? I just joined, so I don't know what you've asked and haven't asked, so I'm just going to wait this one out for a little bit.
Oh, okay, sorry. Well, just wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Sorry for throwing someone in like that, but he had classes. But Scott, I don't know if you want to move on to a possible Bridgeport question.
Yeah, I have 2 Bridgeport questions for you. So the first one is, obviously the Islanders are in a playoff spot. If they move toward the playoffs, because now there isn't necessarily a roster limit, it's just that they had to be down in the AHL past the NHL trade deadline to be in the AHL playoffs. Is there a possibility once Bridgeport gets eliminated, they call up guys like Yaroslav Alak, Kyle Burrows, they're not Burrows, Mike Dalcol, Ryan Pollock, or guys like that can come up as insurance?
Oh, sure. Once their AHL season is over, then they've done that many times over the years. Guys come up and either skate as extras or even get into a game. I think playoffs are always such a time of desperation, and you have to make difficult decisions turning on a dime. You can think. I guess it was in the Penguins series in 2013 when Brock Nelson made his NHL debut in Game 6 of that series. They just threw somebody in, a young guy who hadn't had much experience to try to spark some things. And obviously Alan Quine last year. Alan Quine would be an NHLer right now if it wasn't for that playoff run that he had, scoring a huge goal against the Panthers in Game 5 in double overtime. So, yeah, once Bridgeport season is done, I'm sure you'll see everybody, and there's certainly a chance even before that, for a guy like Bullock, if there's more injuries, they decide they really need somebody. I think if they get closer to a playoff spot before the end of the season, which to me doesn't seem terribly likely that they'll get that kind of separation, but you could certainly see him come up if they need someone to kind of spark the power play or bring that big shot up, or in goal, Yaroslav Halak obviously playing very well in the AHL. If they decide that JF Berube isn't doing the job as a backup, or one of their goalies gets hurt, then obviously Halak would be back. That's the whole reason that they never traded him at the trade deadline, because they feel like they needed him here as insurance. So there's all kinds of situations that could arise, and several guys that could come up. And once Bridgeport season is over, if they miss the playoffs or they get eliminated quickly and the Islanders are still going, yeah, you'll see Michael Dalcol, you'll see Devin Taves, you'll see the guys that they really consider prospects come up and kind of may not play, but certainly experience what it's like to be part of the NHL in the playoffs.
Okay, so obviously you were talking about Devin Taves, who I'm very high on. I love him as a prospect. He's got great speed. Obviously, he won the fastest skater competition for the AHL All-Star Game. He was our representative, and I'm very happy to see his progress. But talking about more Bridgeport stuff, there's one more interesting point that I want to bring up about a little clause in Jeff Berube's contract. If he doesn't play, what do you happen to know the amount of games left until he's set as an RFA?
I'm sorry, who's that you're talking about?
This is
Berube.
Berube, and I think is it 25 he needs to play? Or 20?
Yeah, he's not going to make it. I think if he played every game from now to the end of the season, he would still qualify as a Group 6 free agent. So, yeah, I wouldn't count on him maintaining his RFA status.
So that drives into my question. Now, the Isles have another goalie who will be in RFA status this year, I believe, who has been hurt all year, and I hate to see him hurt. And Christopher Gibson, he showed in his 2 games last year. He's a capable backup. And say if they deal Halak this offseason, say if Berube decides to walk and get a true backup goalie job without Halak on his back, and his agent still keeps getting on Gart Snow's back and Doug Wade and saying, hey, you can't have both my goalies, and one of them, the more experienced playoff guy, being in the AHL. Do you see it's a possibility that Christopher Gibson could be the backup next year?
You know, if he'd been healthy this whole year, then yes, I would have thought so. But I think just him losing pretty much the whole season, he only played a handful of games before he got hurt. I think for a goalie who's developing and who's used to playing a lot, it's tough to just sort of jump right in and suddenly be a guy who's much like Berube has been, mostly practice guy and a guy who plays 20 to 25 games. I think Gibson is still really well regarded in the organization, but I think he's going to stay in the AHL for another year just because the injury, for goalies being off the ice for almost the whole season is a huge setback. So I think for his development, I doubt that they pencil him in as the number 2 guy with the NHL team without really exploring any other options.
So you see him being maximum 3rd goalie next year?
Yeah, I think it's hard to know, whether they decide to buy out Halak. I think a lot really has to do with what they can do with Ilya Sorokin. Their Russian prospect is over in the KHL and still having another fantastic season. The fact that they were able to get him over for a week last summer for their prospect camp is huge, and he loved it being in Long Island. And I think everybody in the organization wants to see him come over. And if he were able to get out of his KHL deal and come over and start next season with the Islanders, that changes everything in terms of their goaltending. It really alleviates a lot of their problems. I think that a lot of people with the Islanders would love to see Sorokin and Greiss be their 1-2 combo, and whether Greiss is the starter and Sorokin needs to ease into it, or he grabs it and goes with it and becomes the starter right away at age 21 or 22 or whatever he'll be the starter next year. That's what the Islanders' ideal situation would be. And, Jeff Berube, he'll have some options being a Group 6 free agent. And I'm sure, as you said, Alan Walsh's agent is not thrilled with Gart Snow and the Islanders, so I'm sure he'll stress to his client to try to find some other situation. But it certainly, I think Berube likes it here despite how he's been used over the couple of years he's been here. So there's certainly a possibility that it's Greiss and Berube again. But yeah, I think Gibson, to me, is the one who kind of is on the outside looking in for now, but that doesn't mean he's lost any status in the organization as a prospect.
All right, so I think Chris is going to ask his first question now. I know he's been quiet the whole time, but I think he has a question ready.
Yeah, so you just said how it was important how they brought Sorokin over for training camp in the summer, or the past summer. With the whole news about how Swedish officials and how they want their guys to develop there, what do you think that really means on Linus Soderstrom?
The Islanders still have to decide, I guess, before a certain date this summer whether to even sign Soderstrom. He hasn't signed an NHL deal yet. That doesn't necessarily mean he'd come over. I'm sure they would prefer that. That's just what every NHL team wants their prospects after a certain time to be closer to them. But I suppose there could be a situation worked out where they sign him to a deal and he stays in the Swedish Hockey League, and play against professionals rather than high-level professionals rather than in the AHL. And all you have to do is look back at some of the development issues that the Islanders had with Mikko Koskinen and Anders Nielsen, who both came over and played in the AHL and kind of bounced up and down a little bit. And just like I said, if Sorokin is in the mix, Gibson is in the mix, they've got Eamon McAdam and Stephon Williams. That's a lot of goalies, even going down to the ECHL level. So maybe the best thing for everybody involved is that Soderstrom stays in Sweden for another year or two and continues to play as well as he's played this year, and then they revisit it in a year or 2 years once things are a little bit more settled in terms of the goalies in the organization. But yeah, it's an interesting viewpoint that the SHL officials gave to the general managers about keeping their players over there, and obviously the KHL tries to keep their homegrown Russian players over there as long as humanly possible, and some guys prefer it there, and some guys would rather be in the NHL. And it seems to me at this point Sorokin wants to be in the NHL, and that could be the biggest impetus to get him over here. So it's always a bit of a battle with some of the European leagues about where it's best to be, and I think with Soderstrom we'll have to see what the Islanders decide to do this summer.
Well, we're going to finish up here, but now I'm going to ask you one question that's going to be on more of a personal note. So we asked this to Andy, and I'm going to ask this to you too. How incredibly cool is it that you get to travel with a team? And do you have any advice for kids that are willing to pursue journalism in the future?
It's still a very fun job. I've been doing it a long time, and when you get a little older, obviously, and there's family involved that are back home, especially on a long trip like this, it can be a little frustrating to be out on the road for 10 or 12 or 14 days. And but I wouldn't put up with it if I didn't love it. And I've always, from when I first started out covering high school sports for Newsday almost 20 years ago, and even going back further when I worked for Stan Fischler when I was in high school, going to Ranger games and getting quotes for him, and helping write articles and chapters and books and interviewing people and really learning, part of the job that's hugely important, which is just making good connections and good relationships with people and learning how to talk to people that I only used to watch on TV. It's good to kind of get over that fear or that that feeling of awe that you're around. When I was in high school, it was Mike Richter and Brian Leach were the guys that I'd watched play, and being able to talk to them in the locker room and realize that the guys they were just a couple years older than me, and had lots of interesting experiences that I had as well. And it's fun to be able to say that those guys, when I still see them, they remember my being around them as an 18-year-old, and it's become this almost like seeing an old friend, which has always been a really nice thing to be able to have. And just advice for young reporters and journalists, it's important to practice your craft like anything else. When I got out of college, I studied journalism, but I didn't really know what it was about until I covered a game on deadline at night and had my laptop open and was writing a story as the game finished, and doing these things in a short space of time that a lot of people don't really understand are such a key secondary part of the job now that I've been doing it so long, being able to produce 600 or 700 words in 20 minutes before deadline, and it just takes practice, and it's hard to get that kind of experience. And I understand that lots of people want you to write for free now, and I don't always recommend it. But if you're doing it for yourself, like you guys having a blog where you want to put stories up and learn how to shape stories and make them interesting, and kind of have that back and forth dialogue online with fans and readers that's so important these days. There's no better way to do it. And then once you have that some of that experience in a few pieces of writing to show people, you hope that it just keeps advancing, and that you can start working to get paid for your articles, and whether you're in college or beyond. It's a hard market to break into, but you have to be able to value yourself and have confidence in your abilities, and just kind of know that there's a lot of things that go into being a good reporter and a good journalist, and that just having a strong opinion and being able to write a
Yeah, so you said something about, having the honor of, talking to Stan Fisher, I think it was, or was it Jiggs McDonald? I think it was Stan Fisher you said. And, just that the opportunity that gave you. And I just wanted to say, again, thank you so much. Talking to them is the same as us talking to you. So we really appreciate you coming on. And, what you did was a great opportunity for us to talk to you. And it was really cool just, talking to someone who knows so much about the Islanders and is really a role model for what we want to be when we're older and, just everything that we want to, that we do and cover and want to talk to. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys, and the four of you being very industrious. It's certainly good to talk to a couple of young guys who are take their passion for being Islanders fans and turn it into something that's more productive than just yelling at each other online or just throwing out crazy opinions. So I appreciate it. You guys did a really professional job, and thanks so much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Arthur.
All right, take care, guys.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, that was Arthur Staple from Newsday. We just had a nice 40-minute interview with him, and he said a lot of cool stuff. So we're going to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes talking with you about some of the stuff he said, some of the stuff we found interesting, and just summarize, exactly what was talked about during our interview. So we're going to start off with a clip of something that he said, and this might be one of the top most interesting things that he said that we didn't really know, and it's about the arena situation. The Islanders, everyone's talking about how they're leaving Barclays Center in 2 years, but Arthur Staple actually said that may not be the case. So we're going to go to him to listen on what he says about this topic. And I'm not sure if it has been confirmed that the Islanders are in fact leaving Barclays in 2 years. It is a fact that they will be leaving Barclays in 2 years as of this point, right?
I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
Even if there was an agreement for a new arena that they could announce tomorrow and put a shovel in the ground, 2 years is way too short to build a state-of-the-art arena. So I think just the 2 years is really that's how long the contract lasts before both sides can kind of open it up and renegotiate, and that's really all that's assured right now. But I would think it's going to be a little bit more than that. The reality is that you can't build a building that fast.
So that was Arthur Staple commenting on what he feels about the Islanders possibly leaving in 2 years. So on that, we're going to go to Jared now. Jared, how do you feel about the Islanders potentially being in Brooklyn for longer than 2 years if they have to work out some contract situations and build a new arena? And would you be in favor of the Islanders staying in Brooklyn for longer than many people expect?
I mean, look, it could go either way. I mean, I've always been an anti-Brooklyn person, but I'd prefer them to move really back onto the island, more towards where they were. And I know that'll likely never happen, but I just hate seeing them in Brooklyn because it's such a nuisance to get there. And it is a nice arena. That was about the only nice thing about them being in Brooklyn is the arena's nice.
Yeah, but the issue that he brought up was that actually the Islanders may be forced to stay there because
And yes, they might be forced to stay there or not. I mean, as long as they're going to be getting a new arena and leaving, I personally think that it's in their best option to find a way to get that new arena and get out of Barclays as quick as possible, even if it means staying there for longer than fans expect.
Okay, so I think what's going to happen based off what he said and doing some research, everyone said Islanders are out of Barclays Center at the end of 2018-19 season, right? It was that year. Yep. And I actually think, based off what he said, it seems like they're going to be there. They're obviously going to renegotiate. The Islanders are not staying in Barclays Center for 25 years. So what I'm thinking is going to happen is maybe they'll renegotiate some things. The Islanders will stay there for a year or two extra, and maybe that will give them time to build an arena in Belmont. So, Scott, how do you feel about what he said on the arena topic?
Nobody really knows. I mean, obviously, like Jared said, it is a nuisance to get there. I mean, I take the train 5 to 7 times a year to go watch them play in Brooklyn. To be honest, the train ride, I don't believe is terrible. It's that the train ticket price plus the ticket price at Barclays, and everything.
Can't forget about the price of food at Barclays Center.
Oh, hell yeah. The food pricing is awful. But you need to go with it, and if we're there until, not 2019, say until we're there until 2021, and after that they open up an arena in Belmont or in Flushing, I don't mind. I just want them closer to home.
Yeah, and moving on to something else he said that goes hand in hand with this. The GM of the Islanders is an important issue, and he will be in control of the team that plays in the arena, obviously. And the first question, something that we really wanted to talk about with Arthur Staple, was the Islanders' GM future. And I'm sure he gets asked this a lot, and Garth Snow's one of his, coworkers and one of his, he gets information from him. So obviously he didn't want to comment on his job status, and he dodged the question. I mean, obviously he was going to, but we just wanted to try to see what he'd say. And he actually didn't say anything about Garth Snow's future job status, but everything that's been happening, Chris, with how, they didn't do anything at the deadline and Garth Snow didn't act urgent, so his job may be safe. Do you feel that his job is safe, and do you want him to be the GM of the Islanders past this year?
All right, so I know that you guys were kind of annoyed and definitely thought that he was gone after this deadline and how he didn't make any trades. Even though I do not agree with the moves he made in the past, I don't really think this deadline. I mean, obviously it would have been great to have Duchesne. I mean, it's Matt Duchesne, but the way we've been playing, I just didn't think it was a necessity to really change the team, because we've been fine of late. I just don't really think we have the team to make it that far. But I mean, I knew whether he was going to make a move or not make a move, he was going to be here by next season. Did I want him to be here? He's made some smart moves, he's made some dumb moves, and he just hasn't made moves. But I do believe he's going to still be the GM. Do I want him to be? Not necessarily, but I think that's just how it is.
So, Scott, I'm going to go to you to talk about some stuff that's going on at the site, and then I think we're going to end this episode.
All right, guys. Site's going well. We have some new stuff coming out. Prospect stuff is coming out soon. I have a big project that I've been working on. It's taken a long time, and it's so going to be worth it. I have a feeling that you guys are going to like it. Like I said, a bunch of new stuff. Some great articles have been put out. Post-trade deadline reaction. Playoff push is coming. Isles have a 1-point lead in the wild card, and hopefully we can keep it up. David, back to you.
Yeah, so with that, something cool that we just did that I'm just going to announce, we had the winners of our edit contest, and what we actually did was our main account, All Islanders, when a picture is posted on that, it actually goes right into Bleacher Report on the Islanders team stream, and that's something that I think is really, really cool. So Apple Design won the picture contest, and the video contest was won by Go Islanders Hut, and both their videos were actually posted to Bleacher Report right on the team stream of the Islanders, so hopefully you guys noticed that. I thought that was really cool for them and for us. So with that, thank you so much to Arthur Staple for coming on. That was truly an honor. It was amazing talking to him, and we hopefully we can have him on again soon. We have some more guests. I mean, honestly, I'm amazed that we've gotten these guests on so far, and we have more lined up. So honestly, I'm amazed. I mean, we just started this a month ago, and we've already talked to the two of the most famous and smart and amazing Islanders writers there are, and hopefully we're talking to some more people. And with that, we'll see you for episode 6, and thank you so much for listening. See you guys.